What's up, ladies? All right, so I'm going to get into this week's keynotes. And it wasn't until I just started filming this video that I realized I look like I'm going to rob a bank, but I'm totally okay with that. Okay, so some notes are my own notes, my own thoughts, my own feelings on the topic. And then if I am going to read some notes that I did find from an outside source, I will let you know that. So grab your pens, grab your highlighters, grab your notebooks. A lot of really good notes here. And I do speak a little bit faster, as many of you know. So feel free to rewind this video whenever you need to. If I say something that like really jolts you, pause, rewind, go back to it. All right, so this is the first disclaimer that I'm gonna put out there. So we all have the chance to make mistakes while we're in pain. Whether the pain is recent or many, many, many years later, we all have the same chance to make mistakes while we're in pain. At the same time, it is only our responsibility to be aware of the choices that we've made and choose how we want to proceed with our actions and consequences. I am not perfect, nor am I flawless in my healing. And I acknowledge this and I take full responsibility for this. So when I have been in pain, we all make mistakes, but I've acknowledged this, and through my journey, I was aware of this. And later on, I'll get to a few questions I used to ask myself while I was in a state of pain to help avoid heightening the consequences, if you will. So the first part of this, in the immediate stages of grief or post-trauma, I believe many of us are in a state where we do not want to reach the stage of gratitude. It might be unhealthy. In my opinion, it might actually be unhealthy because it could be masking a sense of denial and unwillingness to accept the reality of what has happened. For example, someone going through an extremely traumatic situation, but the next day saying, everything's all good, I'm grateful we had our time together, and you're like, but so-and-so your mother just passed away, and the next day you're chippity chirpity, So in my opinion, I feel that if someone does not experience a phase of pain and maybe denial and maybe victim mentality, this could be masking something more serious. We do feel victimized. We tend to feel victimized, ripped off, stolen from, abused, taken advantage of. And there is a state of victim mentality that I believe is a rightful and natural human stage following many traumatic events. As long as we are doing our best to be aware of what we are allowing this stage to look like. Very important. I personally needed to feel bad for myself when my mother passed away, very quickly, very traumatically. And I realized this much later. I needed to make myself cry. I needed to feel bad for myself. And I needed to just be in that phase to almost get it out of my system. Not everyone is the same, but that's what worked for me. However, the most important part of that stage that I was going through, the most important part in my opinion, was to recognize that it was my choice as to how long I stayed in that place and what that all looked like to me. Now, I have a friend who lost her father in a very traumatic way, so kind of similar-ish stories, very traumatically and very suddenly. And what took her 3+ years to achieve took me less than a year. And this is not for me to boast about my healing journey and that I'm wonderful in my healing journey, but I am trying to explain to you that what I did worked for me, and it worked and it still works. And my friend recognizes this and says, I wish I knew some of these things when I was going through what I went through, because I think things could have been different. So my point in sharing a lot of my personal experiences on this topic is because if you have not gone through something extremely traumatic, you may go through something extremely traumatic. So for you to have this knowledge and information, I feel like is really important. If you have gone through something traumatic, maybe this information will help lessen the blow a little bit. So a few conversations I had with myself, questions I asked and told myself, this is where I started. And all of it started on the very first day of the worst day and worst experience of my life, which I'm very grateful that my brain went there. So I offer you this information because we all might already have one traumatic event in our minds based off the journal prompts I gave you, but sooner or later another will happen. Maybe a different magnitudes, maybe a lot less, maybe a lot worse. Nobody knows. But there will come a time that this work that you are doing today and these notes that you're taking today will help you stand up quicker, help lessen the blow, and will hopefully lighten the scars. So here are a few things that I did. Obviously, these are specific to me, but you can also spin them in your own way. So number one, on the worst day of my life, my brain automatically started repeating phrases that I knew would haunt me later. So I started to repeat to myself when I found out of the worst news possible. I started to repeat to myself things like, this is not my fault, this is not my fault, this is not my fault. Because even though there's a lot of situations that happen in our life that are really not even close to being our fault or in our capabilities to be our fault, our brains automatically want to pretend that it's our fault. We did something wrong. So my mind said, tell yourself, this is not your fault, this is not your fault, this is not your fault, this is not your fault. I started to repeat things like, I'm a great person and I have been an amazing daughter. I am a great person, I've been an amazing daughter. I am a great person, I have been an amazing daughter. Obviously, that one's very specific to my situation. I got rid of regrets of arguments, ignoring phone calls. I was like, we had a regular relationship. I was a regular daughter. I was a great daughter. We had a regular relationship. Something else I repeated that you might resonate with is, I have no regrets. I have no regrets. I have no regrets. I have no regrets. Again, specific to my situation, but might work for you. And the one that I feel like could take a top spot for all of us is, this will not take me down. 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 So those are a few things that I repeated to myself within hours of the worst day of my life happening, because that's where my brain said, oh my God, I feel like it went into survival mode. And in survival mode, it said, these are going to come up later and try to take you down. So start just repeating them to yourself right now, and if they make no sense. So I offer you the opportunity to start to create phrases maybe for yourself, like, I have no regrets, or this will not take me down. This will not take me down. I feel like that phrase is like really strong for all of us, because no matter what happens, I think it's a good thing to be able to repeat that over and over and over. Even if you don't know how you're going to solve the problem, the challenge, the trauma, repeating to yourself a phrase that will help just plant a seed. I had no idea what was happening, but I know that repeating those things definitely helped, made an impact. Number two, I started to ask myself, what do I need right now that is in my control? So I started to ask myself these things in an early stages of my trauma, but maybe you can ask yourself these, maybe you didn't deal with your trauma and you're asking yourself these questions years and years later, but it's still important. What do I need right now that is in my control? Is it to take time off work? Okay, how long can I take? If I do have to go back to work, instead of making it seem like completely traumatic and draining, how can I try to have that benefit me or my healing journey in some way? So if I have to go back to work, how can I include that in my healing journey, or how can I take advantage of it and make it less of a negative and more of some sort of positive? If I have to raise a family, where can I allot time just for me without my family? Because of this traumatic situation, we need time for ourselves. And if you have a family, a lot of times that doesn't happen. So where can I push my family aside and just take time and create space just for me? Really ask yourself what you need and not what you want. They're very different. Wants are usually drastic and not always helpful or healthy. When we go through a traumatic situation, a lot of times our wants are, I want to run away, I just want to drink, I just want to forget about the problem, whatever that means. I just want to XYZ. Most of the time, they're not going to be the most realistic. They're often going to be drastic and just impulsive, versus what do I need right now? What do I need right now? Again, if you go through a traumatic situation, that's a great question to ask yourself. What do I need right now to help stabilize yourself? But maybe your situation was so long ago, but now's the time to say, you know what? What do I need right now to help me through this situation? My third question that I put on here is, do I need help? Do I genuinely need help? I'm a thinker. I'm constantly feeling like I can self-diagnose myself and, find all the answers in the world. But there comes a point where you can ask yourself, do I actually need help? Do I need to reach out to somebody beyond myself, beyond a friend or a family member? Even if it's still years and years later, some of us are experiencing, like, I might need help 15 years later. I didn't realize this was going to affect me like this all these years later, or months or days or hours later. I don't know. It's time to be fearless in your asking for help. If it's a need, if it is a need and you need help, ask your friends, ask your family, ask your coworkers, ask your boss, ask a therapist. It is time to be fearless and shameless in your asking for help, because the number one goal here is you and your healing and your mental state, your mental, physical, emotional, verbal, spiritual state. So it's time to ask for help, whether you like asking for help or not. A lot of us don't, but now's the time to get rid of that ego and ask for help. Doesn't matter if someone says, but this was so long ago. Do you still need? It's nobody's business. If you need help, you need help. And that was a pill for me to swallow too, is like, shit, I think I need to see someone. I do. I think this is beyond my control at this point. So for me, I'll give you a couple examples. Finding things to be grateful for me was like almost like piecing together a puzzle or like a mystery game that I was part of. Obviously very real, obviously very painful, but this was and is how my brain chose and still chooses to help me through my trauma of losing my mom so suddenly and so traumatically. And I'm grateful that my mind did this, because I'm here to share it with you. So my mom passed on July 24th, 2020. I am grateful for not the event happening. However, the aftermath that I learned was I took time off work and dove into my spirituality, meditation, and mediumship, which allowed me to have vivid visitation dreams with my mom to the point that I felt like I was talking to her every day. I started a high heels dance journey, which has changed me and many other people's lives. I moved back to my hometown, which means I get to make new memories with my dad, my sisters, and all of my family. I have really awesome new dance opportunities for myself out here as a dancer and a teacher that I never had anywhere else. I've learned a lot about myself as a human, and I've gained new perspective on life, love, happiness, and adventure. And I've become much less stressed and anxious over a lot of things, because life can be short. Life isn't short. Doesn't have to be. We don't know. It can be. And so those are a few things that grateful coping in traumatic events. So those were a few of mine. Now I'm going to get into some notes here that were offered from another website, which I really, really, really love. So let's get into it. Another 5-10 minutes, probably 10 minutes. Okay, so there's a big difference between being grateful and feeling grateful. We can simply say, I feel grateful for, but without truly working on embodying this aspect, gratitude won't be able to be used as a life raft and will not have the same positive effects on you in your day-to-day journey. I quote, feelings follow from the way we look at the world, the thoughts we have about the way things are, the way things should be, and the distance between the points. So go back and listen to that again. Gratitude provides perspective from which we can view life in its entirety and not get so stuck in temporary circumstances and events. Because at the end of the day, this traumatic events that happen, they are temporary. They happened and then that's it. They stopped. Maybe some continue. Everything has a different lifespan. But a lot of the times there's one traumatic event and then it ends. But it's the effects afterwards and what we do with them is how we continue to keep this event alive, this pain alive. So gratitude provides perspective from which we can view life in its entirety, not get so stuck in one temporary circumstance and event. This perspective is difficult to achieve, but like a muscle, the more you work on it, the stronger it gets. So, reframing disaster. Actually, before I get there, let me do one other one. Remembering the bad. So this sounds a little alarming and you're like, really? You want me to sit and remember all the bad things? Let me get into it. This is word for word from a site. Trials and suffering can actually refine and deepen gratefulness if we allow them to show us not to take things for granted. When times are good, people take prosperity for granted and begin to believe that they are invulnerable. In times of uncertainty, though, people realize how powerless they are to control their own destiny. If you begin to see that everything you have, everything you've counted on, everything you love, maybe can be taken away instantaneously, it becomes much harder to take things for granted. So, crisis can make us more grateful, but research says gratitude also helps us cope with crisis. I love this next phrase. Consciously cultivating an attitude of gratitude builds up a sort of psychological immune system that can cushion us when we fall. Rewind, play that again. There is scientific evidence that grateful people are more resilient to stress, whether minor everyday hassles or major personal upheavals. The contrast between suffering and redemption serves as the basis for one of the tips for practicing gratitude: remembering the bad. It works in this way. Think of the worst time in your life, your sorrows, your losses, your sadness, and then remember that you are here, able to remember them, that you made it through the worst time of your life thus far. You got through the trauma, you got through the trial, you endured the temptation, you survived the bad relationship, you're making your way out of the dark. Remember the bad things, then look to see where you are now. But very important point here. The point is not to ignore or forget the past, but to develop a fruitful frame of reference in the present from which to view your experiences and events. So changing your perception on how you view those events will then change the way that your reality sits with those and your future. This is what I put into your journal section here. Gratitude maximizes happiness in multiple ways. And one way is that it helps us reframe memories of unpleasant events in a way that decreases their unpleasant emotional impact. That implies that grateful coping entails looking for positive consequences of negative events. Oh my God. Rewind, listen to that, write it down, star it. I swear I have it highlighted everywhere I possibly can. And the last point I want to share, so that was remembering the bad, is reframing disaster, right? It's all about perspective. To say that gratitude is a helpful strategy to handle hurt feelings does not mean that we should try to ignore or deny suffering and pain. The field of positive psychology has at times been criticized for failing to acknowledge the value of negative emotions. Positive culture, right? I have good vibes only, no bad vibes. You know, we all say those things, but genuinely some people try to fully live those through, which can be definitely be harmful. To deny that life has its share of disappointments, frustrations, losses, hurts, and setbacks and sadness would be unrealistic and unjustifiable. Life has suffering, and no amount of positive thinking will ever change this truth. Fact. So, simply telling people to buck up or woman up and count their blessings and remember how much they still have to be grateful for certainly can do harm. Processing a life experience through a grateful lens does not mean denying negativity. It is not a form of superficial happyology. I love that. Instead, I highlighted this part right here. It means realizing the power you have to transform an obstacle into an opportunity. It means reframing a loss into a potential gain. Recasting negativity into positive channels of gratitude. So you're not ignoring negativity, instead you are recreating it. You are taking it, you are transforming it, and you are putting it into a different channel to focus on gratitude. If you are troubled by an open memory or a past unpleasant experience, you might consider trying to reframe how you think about it using the language of thankfulness or gratitude or gratefulness. The unpleasant experiences in our lives don't have to be of the traumatic variety in order for us to gratefully benefit from them. Whether it is a large or small event, here are a few questions you can ask yourself. 1, what lesson did this experience teach me? Or what lessons did this experience teach me? 2, can I find ways to be thankful in the aftermath of what happened, even though I was not thankful at the time it happened? 3, what ability did the experience draw out of me that surprised me? Some people will say resilience, I didn't think I was that strong, or I didn't think I could, X, Y, Z. 4, how am I more the person I want to be today because of it? Have my negative feelings about the experience limited or prevented my ability to feel gratitude in the time since it occurred? Now, these next two moments are this next little section is highlighted because I love it. Remember, your goal is not to relive the experience, but rather to get a new perspective on it. And I will repeat this. Your goal is not to relive the experience, but rather get a new perspective on it. Simply rehearsing an upsetting event makes us feel worse about it. That's why catharsis has rarely been effective. Now, catharsis is the process of releasing repressed emotions. Emotional venting, write this down, emotional venting without accompanying it with, let me get this right. Emotional venting without accompanying insight does not produce change. No amount of writing about the event will help unless you are able to take a fresh, redemptive perspective on it. This is an advantage that grateful people have, and it is a skill that anybody can learn. So essentially, you can talk and journal and video and share. You can talk about a traumatic event and think about it a million times in a million different ways. But unless you are willing to take a fresh perspective on that traumatic event, very little change, growth, healing are going to happen. Now, last tiny little tidbit. We're at almost 22 minutes, so this is perfect. The last little 10 habits of grateful people, even in tough times. Again, top 10 habits of grateful people, even in tough times. Numero uno. Grateful people don't expect that life is going to give them everything they deserve. 2, they do not have preconditions to their happiness. I'll be happy when XYZ. 3, people who are grateful have realized that you cannot have the rainbow without the rain. 4, grateful people have hope. 5, those who are steeped in bitterness and grudges have no space in their hearts to be grateful. 6, people who are grateful know that a grateful attitude takes work. Holy, it takes work. I have human relapses all the time where I might be ungrateful for something and I'll be saying it, but at least now at this point in my life, I can snap right out of it a lot quicker than a day or two later. It's like immediate, like, whoa, I withdraw from whatever I was sharing. Number 7, grateful people have healthy thinking habits. We're working on that. 9, grateful people are, I think we're at 9. Anyways, grateful people are flexible in their thinking. That was 8. That was 8. Grateful people are flexible in their thinking. Number 9, people who love to learn tend to be grateful. People who love to learn tend to be grateful. And number 10, grateful people define their self-worth by their determination and their dreams, not their regrets and their disappointments. I'm going to read that one again because it's real good. Grateful people define their self-worth by their determination and their dreams, and not by their regrets and their disappointments. There you have it. So many good bits of information. Those and the stuff that I had read that does come from an outside source, I have both of those links. One of them is lifehack.org, which is an article written about the top 10 habits of grateful people. And then another one was thegreatergood.berkeley.com was an article, a universal article from a university. Anyways, so good. So many notes that you could be taking, so many big stars or highlights. I highlight things myself so that when I go back through my own notes, I get to read the moments that I felt were the most important for me. So not only did I give you a few tidbits on questions you can ask yourself, and maybe I'm going to call them like emergency protocols you can take when something traumatic might happen or come up again. Or maybe those are some things, like I said in the beginning, that you can start to repeat to yourself now. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. I've done a great job, or I'm a great person. This will not take me down. This will not take me down. You could be adventuring into something right now that has to do with a traumatic event from many, many moons ago, and you're scared to open that door because you feel like it's going to take you down. So repeating things like this will not take me down. Obviously asking yourself questions, having conversations with yourself, creating safety protocols for yourself is so important. And I did it automatically, but because I did that, I'm trying to bottle that. I'm trying to bottle what I did in my most terrifying moment, and I'm trying to make sure that I can bottle that, put it on a shelf, so that when, knock on wood, something might come up again, that I can go back to that natural chemical that jumped out at me. So I'm offering that bottle to you. Maybe you can create your own. But anyways, you have so much good information. I love you guys. Thank you for being a part and watching this entire video. Normally this gets said in our sessions, but we just had such good conversation today that I didn't want to force this. So I love you guys. Another beautiful week down.